Hello and welcome back to the Burnt Pancakes podcast. I am your host, Katie Fensky, and like always, I'm here to remind you that everyone burns their first pancake. On today's momversation, I'm sharing a little bit about what it's like to find your passion, especially in the midst of motherhood. So many times as moms, we feel like we lose ourselves or we're on a path and we just feel like it's not right. I'm sitting down with Jenn Adamson. She is a manifestation and mindset coach, and she's going to share how she went from corporate America to becoming this coach. She is going to inspire you with her manifestation tips and her story on how she followed her intuition and found something she was passionate about, something I think all of us moms are striving for. So stay tuned for this awesome conversation. Hi, Jenn. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Katie. Thank you so much for having me. This is such an honor. I'm so excited.
This is so fun. I'm excited about this conversation. I feel like there's a lot that's going to come out of this. So why don't you just introduce yourself first? How old's your daughter? And then we'll get into what you do.
Yeah. So I'm Jenn Adamson, and my daughter is, gosh, how old is she? She's 5. She's soon to be 6 in September.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So my middle's about to turn 6 in August. Okay. So is she starting kindergarten this year?
Yes. So the district that we live in, they had a super early cutoff last year. I think they actually moved it back to October, which is kind of funny, but it was beautiful because initially I was like, oh my gosh, how am I going to do this? Because, I'm a nurse and I'm an entrepreneur and I'm running my own business. And I really stopped and was like, you know what? She's not going to be this little for much longer. So I'm going to relish this next year. Yeah.
Okay. This is fascinating because mine, who turned 6 August 1st, he was not ready last year to be a brand new 5-year-old and start kinder, but our district, it's like, I think the cutoff is September or something. So he qualified for kinder last year. And I was like, no, like he's not ready.
Yeah.
It was fine when I did it, but then when I enrolled him in kinder this year, they were like, oh, his birthday puts him in first grade next year. And I'm like, no. Like he is now ready. And I feel very good about having this extra year, but I had to go through some hoops to starting kindergarten. And I'm like, why would they do that? He's so young.
I love that, Katie, you said that and that you were intuitive, because initially my reaction first, because I was, I'm like, go.
Right. It would have been so nice to have him in school last
year. It would have been so nice.
nice.
And there was also, as I sat and like really reflected and tapped into my intuition more, I was like, you know what? Not only will I get to have her for this next year, but same thing. I was like, why not get her even more prepared, because she's been in preschool this last year. And so she's ready now. And there's something to be said about us as moms listening to our guts, following our intuition, and knowing what is best for our children.
I felt like no one was listening to me when this whole thing was happening. They were just like, well, his birthday, this. And I'm like, no. And I am so grateful because speech wasn't ready, like emotionally wasn't ready. And he's going to be the tallest kid in the class now, but I'm like, he has even his preschool teachers were like, wow, like last year he went from just like being this quiet little kid to now he's the leader of his group. And I'm like, I've read so much about how play is important for these little kids, not sitting at a desk and doing worksheets.
So true. Yeah. She's in a full day summer camp this summer. And even that was an adjustment because she was in preschool for 3 hours, 4 days a week, small class size, to then full day and I think maybe 15 or 20 kids in our class. So the first few weeks were a challenge for us. And I was actually really grateful because it was like, oh, okay, this could be some potential foreshadowing to what could happen.
Kinder's going to be. It's usually like 3 weeks into kindergarten is when they all start having their little meltdowns. Like my oldest, he was so ready for kindergarten, but it was like at the month mark, it was like, what's going on here? You were fine 2 weeks ago. Yeah. Okay. Well, so come September, we'll be in the same boat. We'll like cheers each other. Like we'll have a virtual coffee date.
3 or 4 weeks into it, we'll connect and ask how we're doing.
Like, oh my gosh, I can actually get work done.
Or the opposite, or it's quite the other. Like, right.
I still have my 3-year-old at home, but he'll be in preschool too. So I'm like 3 hours, 3 days a week. can be sane. I can do stuff. I'm so excited. So,
That's huge.
okay. Well, great. I'm excited to hear how our kindergarten transition goes. So let's hear about your journey. So I want to hear what you did when you became a mom, what you were doing, and how motherhood probably transformed what you're doing now.
Ooh, I love that question so much. So I'll back up just a few years before motherhood, where I was in corporate. So I was in corporate for 8 years. I was a sustainability consultant for Fortune 500 companies, and yeah, I was running up the ladder real fast in the
Is that what you
corporate
went to
ladder.
college for? You were like, I'm going to be in business. I'm going to.
Yeah. So I went to college for actually public relations, but I think with public relations and communications, which is like such an art for me to communicate,
Mhm.
that was really easily transcribed into the position. So, there was initially the first job out of college was a PR position, but then through networking and meeting other people and going through
Right.
the time. Yeah. I was like,
And I,
I
I
really
want
like
to
this.
tell my boys too, you go to college, you get a degree, you're not tied to whatever degree you
100%.
get. Like I am learning that
100%.
as a 40-year-old woman. Like you don't have to
Yeah.
spend your entire life doing what you did when you were 20. Yeah.
It's so true. It's so true because listen, when we're 18, 19, 20 years old, our minds are
No
still
idea.
vacant.
Right.
How do we know what we want to do? Even now, I'm still having so much fun discovering other parts of me
Yep.
and other things that I enjoy doing and new passions. So never let that, I always think, like, never let that light go. Always have that zest for life, and
Yes.
the universe will just match that energy. But so yeah, I was climbing up that corporate ladder, manifesting a lot of things left and right. And over time, it was an 8 year process. The last year and a half, I was really burnt out, and I wasn't aware of it initially. But over a series of things, I just realized that corporate just wasn't for me, at least in the capacity in which I was operating at the time. And so what ended up happening is I quit my job. And that was at the time I thought I was crazy. It was absolutely what I needed to do.
Yep.
But I want to just say real quick too, you don't have to do that. There's other ways to your path is unique to you, and that's what I like to share with my clients is like, just because my story is one of me going then to India and finding myself, you don't have
Wow.
to
Yeah.
go to India, because I know a lot of your listeners are moms, and so it's like at the time
Dude,
I
I can't
wasn't.
do that.
So I had that. Yeah, I had that. I was
Yeah.
able to do that at the time. Now a little bit of a different story.
Or that following your
So when
passion
I came
doesn't
back,
have to be so dramatic. Like I did quit my job too. It
exactly.
doesn't have to be that. It could be
Yes.
finding a passion that like works within your life. Yeah.
100%. So the way I like to look at it is like, look at your passion and your purpose as like this chunk of rock, and you're the sculptor, and you get to create your masterpiece, and you can create it at any rate and pace that's perfect for you. You can step back from it and take a break, and then you can always come back to it. But it's like this constant chiseling, and it's different pieces and parts of ourselves, and over time, right, over time we create this. It is a masterpiece in and of
Right.
itself even beforehand, but yeah, then we get to step back and really take in all of the beauty of allowing ourselves to go at our own pace, and allowing ourselves to honor our own unique paths, and allowing ourselves to continue to keep coming back to that art too.
That
Yeah.
feels so
Yeah.
good because there are so many times where it's like I'm on this journey of, I started a business, starting a podcast, and you just want to know that it's going to be successful, it's going to work. And you want it right
Yes,
now. Like I want it all right now, but it's sometimes you have to go, okay, it's baby steps. Like
it
I
is.
know I'm going to get there. I know it's going to take off, but baby steps.
It is. It
Yeah.
is. It's baby steps, and it's trusting that the seeds that we're planting are potent and powerful. So like there's things from like 10 years ago that are coming up full circle for me. There's things that came up a year ago that are coming up full circle, and even things from a few months ago. So everything, there's not, it's just it's life, and I teach manifestation too, is so multifaceted. There's so many dynamic pieces. It's not static. And the more that we can allow ourselves, especially as women, because we have this really beautiful divine feminine energy to hold and to hold space for it all. And that can be challenging at first because we're not taught these
Hustle, go, go, go.
Yes, exactly. And so what I realized in corporate is that I was very much trapped in that hustle culture, very much in that hustle mindset. And so when I came back from India, I decided the next stepping stone for me was to go back to school to be a nurse.
How long were you in India? So it was like, I'm just
Yeah.
gonna go just recharge.
It was, yeah. So what's funny is like back, I think it was in 2006, Eat, Pray, Love came out, and this I went to India was 2012, so 6 years later. But it was so interesting when I read that book. I was like, that's me. That's going to be me. I'm reading. It was like this deep intuitive knowing of like, and it was because I got divorced at that time too. And so I don't know if it was a self-fulfilling prophecy or if it was just this big intuitive hit of like, oh, wow, I see so much of me in this story right now. So people would really
envision it.
Yeah, right. So not my intention at all. I kind of set that down and went about my life. And so I became a mom. I went into a really intense nursing program. And what's interesting is that about 6 to 8 weeks before my graduation, I had been so stressed out. And I was also I had this deep yearning to be a mom one day, to just be a mom. And I remember about 8 weeks before my graduation, I was just like, you know what? I have to let this go right now. Like it's eating me inside. I'm not at peace anymore. And so I kind of let it go and was like, whatever is meant to happen will happen. And my mission is to always have and live a beautiful life, whether I become a mom or not. And no joke, about 8 weeks later, I didn't even know this, but during graduation of nursing school, I was actually pregnant, but I had no idea.
When you let it go is when it comes.
Yeah, 100%. It is. There's so much power in surrendering. And it's not about giving up. It's just allowing ourselves to access that deeper sense of peace and stillness within ourselves. That takes time and that takes practice.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I am a single mom. But in my soulmate relationship with my partner of 2 years. And then about 3 years ago in 2020, I had another dark night of the soul, but because of the prior one, I kind of had an idea of what was going on and decided life is too short. I had lost my dad to cancer and I was like, life is too short. I'm doing what I'm meant to do, which is to be a coach and to be a speaker. And I don't know how I'm going to do this, but I'm going to figure it out.
You were nursing at the time. Yeah. So you were
yes.
And that was still during the pandemic. You were a nurse.
It was.
That was I was time to start.
It was. Yeah. Oh man.
Yeah. Here you go.
Yeah. I was a nurse leader too. So I was leading 75 other nurses and CNAs, and it was a very large unit. It was a 36-bed unit. So I was also, collaborating with doctors and respiratory therapists. And there were so many. Our county in the state of Colorado, I believe, was one of the highest rate of COVID cases. And so that was really intense too, because again, remember the feminine energy, it was a struggle, wasn't easy all the time, but the capacity to hold all of this and still have a deep sense of who you are. Yeah. There were times where I was burning out yet again.
Yeah. And you had a little one at home at the time.
I did.
How old was she? So how old was she? Like 2?
He was 2.5, 3 years old. So there was also the fear of like taking it home with me, right? And infecting her with the virus. There was a lot. It was a lot. It was a lot.
Yeah, I can imagine. Oh my gosh. Okay. So you're at the point you're like, this is not my path anymore. So what?
Yeah. So I will say I still nurse very, very, very occasionally, a few times a month, because what I love is I bring in the science and the spirituality of manifesting. But what I realized is that it was a process too. It was a process of, well, first of all, the first step I did was hire a coach. Because I was like, there's no way I was like, there's no way I want to do. I could, don't get me wrong. It would take me a lot longer. I don't think we would be talking today. But I also didn't want to. I felt like I was so isolated over the last few years of like intense nursing program and then just being a mom, right? Like the transition from not being a mom to motherhood is also can be
Oh
very
my gosh.
daunting.
It was huge for me.
Yeah.
People always ask
Yeah.
me, because I have 3 kids. They're like, oh, what was the hardest transition? It was 3 the most. I'm like 0 to 1 by hands down
Absolutely. I
but it
believe
just
that.
rocked my world, like in a
Yes.
good way, but it was a big adjustment for me.
It is. Well, it's you're taking one, almost like if you take it in polar opposites, you're taking one side of the extreme and then the neck
Mhm.
overnight, literally overnight,
Yeah.
you're on the opposite
Yep.
side. Yeah.
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 Yeah. It literally
So
overnight.
it's overnight or during the day, depending on when
Right.
they're born.
Within a span of a few hours, you go from being, I can be totally selfish to
Yeah.
100% selfless. Like this one
I
little
rem
thing, everything.
I was in labor for 37 and a half hours and I couldn't sleep because I was so excited, right? And I know they tell you just go to
Yes.
sleep, like try to get,
Yep.
but I couldn't. And I had no idea what was to be foreshadowed, but it was in labor for 37 and a half hours. I remember when I was first learning to breastfeed with Stella in the hospital with the lactation consultant, I was like, oh, I just can't wait to catch up on this sleep that I just missed. And it hit me. And it was like, no, honey, you're not catching up on this.
For
Like
like
you're
6
kind of
years.
deficit. Yeah.
Like I still haven't caught up on it yet.
Right, right, exactly. It's like just now starting to kind of
Yeah.
be like, oh, okay, okay. But yeah, so it was a process too. And I realized I didn't want to do it alone. I wanted to be with people, and there's such power. We can't help but become the person who already has our goals, dreams, and desires when we surround ourselves with people who are of a similar energetic frequency. We just can't help but be, like they say, our highest self or our
Yeah.
best version of ourselves. We just can't help but do that.
Yeah.
It's almost like I remember it's kind of like I joke with my mentor now. It's like sometimes I'll envision when I was studying for nursing school, I would joke and say, can I just put the textbook underneath my pillow and
And
sleep
let it
and like by
absorb.
osmosis? Yeah. But
Uh-huh.
it is true when you surround yourself around people of like minds who
Right.
are on a similar
Well, don't
journey.
they
Yeah.
say you are the average of the whatever people you're around? It's like,
Yes, they
so I'm
do.
like a 9, 6, and 3-year-old because I'm always with them,
I am 5.5-year-old. I love it.
especially this summer. Oh my goodness.
Oh yeah.
Boys, little
Yeah.
boys.
I
No,
love
it
it.
is so true. It is so true. That's something that I like set a goal this year. I'm like, I need to surround myself with women that will bring me up, will support me. And
Yeah.
yeah, and I reached out and I like did a mastermind group, started like a little book club because I'm like, I just need that in my life. Motherhood had sucked it all out of me. And I'm like, it's time for me to like get that back.
Totally. Yeah, we kind of, in a sense of the way we do somewhat lose ourselves in motherhood, but then what's beautiful is like we get to rebuild that,
Mm-hmm.
and we get
Yes.
to take the pieces that work and maybe let the other pieces go. And it's a really beautiful process because we can
Yes.
choose, and
Yeah.
it feels empowering and
Yeah.
liberating. Yeah.
You're still that person, but things have changed. It's different,
Yes.
but
Yeah.
it's even more special. Yeah. Like I'm taking pieces of me as a 20-year-old, and I think I love where I'm at right now.
Yes. And even we were talking beforehand about our kids in school about play. Like I am sure this resonates with you, but learning, and I just last night I took my daughter to her first hip hop class
Oh,
dance,
fun.
and just watching her play, like not
Yes.
even she wasn't expected to know the whole steps, and she was
Mhm.
the youngest one in the class at the time, and I told her, I was like, just go and have fun. That's the most important thing. And watching her, it's always so amazing to see her and how she plays, because I feel like that is such a key ingredient that we tend to lose as
Yeah.
we grow up.
Yeah. Well, they say, look at how kids use their imagination,
Mhm.
like my son right now. Oh, I'm going to be a fireman when I grow up. And,
Mhm.
the other one's like, Mom, one day I'm going to have a mansion that has a pool in the back and this. And you're like, how as adults do we lose that imagination? It's like society trains us to be like, that's not allowed. And we stop dreaming of things. So I'm like,
Yes.
I'm sure you are big into like manifesting with your daughter and teaching your kids yeah, you can have whatever you want, if that's something
100%.
you want, go for it.
100%. Yeah. One big thing I really appreciate with my own mom was that at a very young age, I was, same thing. I'd be like, hey, mom, I want to do this. Hey, mom, I'm going to be this. I'm going to be this. And she said, you can be whatever you want to be as long as you put your mind to it.
Yeah.
And that just has
Yeah.
always been instilled in me.
Yeah. And I love that. It's not like you're not pigeonholed to what you did in college. Otherwise, I'd be teaching for the next 30 years. And that was not making me happy. I learned when I quit my job, it was terrifying. I remember submitting my notice and then I was like, what did I just do? Oh my God. Like I almost had like a mini panic attack.
Yeah.
But I realized I was like, it was a good job,
Mhm.
but it was not something that lit me up. I did the best I could, but I was like, this is not what I meant to do anymore.
I love that. And it takes courage,
Oh my
right?
God, it
And
was so scary.
I love that you say that and you share that because it was also scary for me to leave corporate. And it was also scary for me to leave nursing full time and down to the place where it's like the sweet spot for me now, where I get to come in now and I'm fully refreshed, fully plugged in. So I give my best to my
Yeah.
patients and leave the day feeling very fulfilled and not tired and exhausted or depleted anymore. But what I love that you said is like, I think sometimes we forget that if we have some fear, that we have to ask ourselves what's underneath that fear. Because of course, the ego loves familiarity. It's going to
Keeps you
thrive.
safe.
It's going to thrive in what's familiar, but we know that what is familiar is not what's going to lead us to our growth, our dreams, our desires, and everything that we want to achieve in life. And
Yeah.
so that does require us to take steps out, and that is scary. And so I always teach my clients that the bridge, like the ultimate bridge to manifesting is embodying an energy of courage and bravery. It's true. It's because we will have to take steps and we will have to stretch some. And we don't have to do it all at once. It's one step at a time. And that is what leads us to our goals. That's what leads us. That's the first step to manifesting. And we can have that trembling feeling inside and sometimes question, is this right? Because I feel so trembly or
What is
something.
everyone going to think about me? What are they going to
Exactly.
say?
Exactly. Or do I have the money for this? Or am I going to be able to find the money? Am I going to be able to make this money back? Or am I
Oh gosh,
worthy
all
to
of
have
those
this?
went through my head.
Yes.
That's still are
Yes.
going.
Am I
Yeah.
worthy to have this support? So it really is, you have to understand that our brain is like a computer and it operates on a basic software, and it is up to us to be able to upgrade that software. And we don't have to upgrade it from version 1 to version 13.0 overnight. It's one step at a time. But when we start to understand how our brain truly operates, if we have been grown up to work a 9 to 5 and then our dream and it's pulling at us and it's pulling at us, what ends up happening is it becomes more painful to stay constricted than it actually does to expand.
Yep.
And we just have to talk our brain through this one step at a time.
That is exactly the journey I was on. It was just like, I know I'm not happy. I need to get out. But it was reprogramming the things that I kept saying in my head. Like my inner voice was very loud for a very long time. And it was like, oh my God, how am I going to do this? I read somewhere an acronym and it was FEAR. It's false evidence appearing real. So like fear is, like it's not true. Or you just need to reprogram your brain to train it to not be afraid of those things. Absolutely.
Yes, 100%. And it's a process.
Yeah. Oh gosh. I would love to say that overnight I decided to start a podcast and I did a blog, but it was literally 2021 when I like started my website. And I'm still like in the beginning process of getting this all going, and
100%.
Yeah.
100%.
Baby steps.
I like to teach, I like to say, like, our brains also are very much like, okay, what's the next thing? Okay, I got here. Now what's the next thing? And a big key component to the manifesting process is also allowing ourselves to celebrate, because, if I take my story of corporate, I was on that very vicious cycle of achieve, achieve, achieve. and I achieved everything I set my mind to, and I achieved it pretty quickly. But the thing is I was depleting my energy in the process of it. So much so that I was suicide. I was having suicidal thoughts. And so what you have to understand is that in this process, we have to celebrate who we are and who we're becoming. Because really, ultimately, we will, if we achieve what it is that we set out to achieve, but we can't actually take that in and fully receive it, we're not going to find ourselves in a very happy, joyful, fulfilled state. And we're going to find ourselves in another energetic frequency, which is very much enmeshed with control and desperation and that hustle, clingy energy, which the universe will only simply match who we are inside. So there is a lot of this unpacking, and there is a lot of, I love that you said it was like understanding the stories that you were telling yourself, the narratives, because that is ultimately such a key component to the process. And it's an ongoing thing that never stops, because as much as sometimes I would like to say, I wish we could remove our ego, there's a lot that it does for us as well. It keeps us safe, right? Yeah, it keeps us from walking out into the highway, right? It allows us to recognize too that, hey, we are in these bodies and we are here on this earth, and we have things that we have to consider too here in this physical world. And also then it's our soul self that gets to kind of go into that expansion, and together it becomes this co-creative process of not demonizing or villainizing the ego, but making friends with it and understanding that, like, it's sometimes, well, when we're driving, my daughter will sometimes be like, no, mommy, it's this way. No, mommy, it's this way. Are you sure it's this way? Kind of looking at our ego as this loving entity that is just curious or maybe trying to keep us safe. And we know we're the drivers in the driver's seat. So we can lovingly say, thank you so much. I appreciate you, ego, for being there and giving me your 2 cents and your perspective on things. I'm going to stay firm, and I'm going to allow myself to be the driver, or my soul self to be the driver instead.
Love that. Okay. So you, you work with clients. So now you're a coach.
Yes.
How did that process start, and what is it?
Yeah.
What do you do?
Yeah, I love that question. So, I'll be honest with you. The first 8 to 9 months was just a lot of coaching, a lot of kind of dipping my toes in, and then going, oh, okay, this is scary, right?
Try out this
Showing up
system.
really, yeah, learning. And I initially started as a health coach, and so I want to also give people permission of, like, what you start off with is not necessarily set in stone. Give yourself the freedom to be curious and to explore, because I initially started as a health coach, and then as I began to sign on clients, I realized that there was more to than just health coaching. It was more this holistic. And then as I was coaching these clients, I was talking a lot about manifesting and the law of attraction. So then I was like, oh, heck, I'm a manifestation coach. I'm a mindset manifestation coach. And then over time, then it became a coach for high achieving women, and then specifically for corporate women. But obviously, I'll be completely transparent. That's for the whole branding. Like, they tell you to get very clear on your target. And I will say, that has taken me a couple years to get very clear. And even then, not all of my clients are in corporate. Some of them are entrepreneurs too, or some of them are nurses. But getting clear, because here's the reason why is consistency and clarity are so important in your business, because consistency shows that you are someone who is showing up. So people are paying attention then, even if it may seem like at first no one's really listening. There's so many times I get people who won't like something, but they'll direct message me and be like, that totally changed my life. Like, thank you.
So I need to keep putting it out on social media. Sometimes it's like, oh my gosh.
Am I talking to crickets here? Right?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. There are women, or there are people, whoever your audience is, there are people who are praying for you to show up. Praying for you to show up. So you must show up, right? And that was one of the core beliefs that I allowed myself to instill in the very beginning of, there are women who are praying for me to show up right now.
And I hear that too, where they say, like so I'm in potty training, and there
Yes,
are thousands of potty trainers and books out there, but someone was like, but there's only one you. And if
exactly.
you're going to be that one person that helps this one particular mom that is not getting help anywhere else, it's like, okay, yes, I could be that one person for her.
Absolutely. There's lots of
Keep going.
manifestation coaches, right? There's tons of
Right.
manifestation
Right.
coaches. And I am at a place now where it's like they are doing their thing and I love it. And sometimes I get like amazing inspiration from them. Others I don't vibe with, and that's okay too.
Yeah.
But here's the thing, exactly what you said, Katie, is you yourself. No one is you. And I think the biggest thing is we can allow ourselves to think, well, the market's so saturated with X, Y, and Z. So what's the point? Yes, but here's the thing. No one can say it specifically and as uniquely as you. And there are people out there who are going to ultimately resonate with how you are, who you choose to show, who you are. I mean, who you
Right.
be on a
Right.
day-to-day
I
basis.
need to keep putting out the podcast. Like, don't
Keep doing
compare
it.
myself to anyone else. Yes.
Do not. Yeah.
Yes.
And that's it. I love that you said comparison too, because I am not immune to that. And I want to
Oh,
just
that's
be
hard. That's really hard.
100% transparent. In fact, recently, I'd say about 3 weeks ago with my coach, I was kind of in this like lower feeling, like I was feeling a little down and out and
Mhm.
discouraged. And I recognized, because this work is so important, I don't ever stop doing this. I coach myself and I have my own coach. I realized, oh, yeah, I was comparing myself. I was trapped in this comparison. But the more that we choose to allow ourselves to realign and realign and realign with love, the more clarity we have in the direction of where we're meant to go.
Yeah.
It's just the truth. It's just the truth. And so I would say is just keep going up. And here's another thing I like to share too. When I signed on my first client, well, actually, this was my second client. Let me clarify. It was my second
Mhm.
client. I took a big leap, and I charged $2,000 for 6 weeks of coaching, and I was 9 months into it. No, I wasn't even 9 months into it. This was 3 months into coaching.
Okay.
I signed on my first client, and I didn't have a single program in place. I just went with it because I had my own coach coaching me through it. She's like,
Yes.
no,
You can
you
do
know
it.
who you are. You have coached many people. You may not have coached in the literal sense
Right.
of having paid clients, but there are hundreds of people. If you're in some sort of industry like this, you're not here for an accident on accident. You're here because you've been helping people for years and years and years.
People will
And
probably naturally come to you asking
100%.
questions. Yes.
Yes. So it's your experience and your expertise that allows you to be certified. Okay. Now, if I'm not saying dissuading you into going into certifications or I have to sign up for it, but what can often happen is we get stuck in this trap of no, I have to be fully ready. I have to be fully ready. I have to
Mhm.
know what I'm doing. And I remember she said yes. My client said yes. And then I was like, great, I'll email you a contract and the details of the program. I had nothing in
Let me
place.
go write up a contract right
Let
now.
me go write up a contract. And then literally, like channeled 30 minutes later, I had a whole program in place for her. And
Wow.
it's a program that I used for about a year afterwards. Yeah.
Wow. That's amazing.
So you can do it. And it is that courage, right? It's that bridge of courage and bravery of like, I was shaking the entire time when I
Mhm.
had my
Yep.
first sales call with her. I was like, oh my gosh, but
Like,
it's just,
put on
yes.
that, like, that face, like, oh, I totally know what I'm doing. Like, I'm gonna fake it till I make it, like, yeah.
Here's the thing, it's not really faking it because you know who you are.
Yeah.
You know who you
Embodying what you are. Yeah.
Yes, you know
Yeah.
who you are, and you know ultimately that the skills that you have are so valuable. They're so
Yes.
incredibly valuable. And then it's this beautiful new narrative cycle of women are praying for me. I have unique skills and talents that no one else can offer. And these unique skills and talents are valuable. And then it goes into this beautiful positive circle. And so then you create this gorgeous momentum in your life
Mhm.
because you have
And
this
that's when
new,
things come flooding in.
yes,
Yeah.
yes, because you have this new belief system. And then you go back again. Women are praying for me to show up. I have unique skills and talents that no one else can offer. It's unique to me, and and they are valuable, and they can transform. I know deep in my heart. And it's okay if we have these feelings of doubt from time to time. It's just a humanness, right?
Right.
It's human nature for us to feel like we're stepping back, or to even, and I want to share one other analogy. I feel like I'm giving a lot, but like, this kind of work is not linear. It's just not. And as much as I would like it to, in some instances, like I would love for this to be linear, oftentimes it is this dance. And there are going to be times where we feel like we are hiking up the mountain and we're doing all the things, and if that feels in alignment to you, do it. But I also want to add in that we as women have this beautiful superpower, which is our feminine energy. It's our intuition. And we must first and foremost align to our intuition, because that is what is our compass, that is our navigation system. And so there will be times where you will be hiking up the mountain, and then there will be times when my coach says, well, you'll be resting on the beach, or you'll be wandering through the mountains. It's like the creative, where you're getting the ideas. And I like to use the analogy of a bow and an arrow, where it might feel like sometimes you're taking a step back. And if you can look back and say, wow, look at where I am. This is where I imagined myself being 6 months ago, 6 years ago. Who cares? It doesn't matter the timeline. But if you are in a place where you imagine yourself being, that is a sign that you are on the right path, that you are doing the right things. You are creating this momentum. So then you come back to this present moment and you allow yourself to go back, because the arrow has to go back to create that tension so that it becomes the launch, right? So if it didn't have any tension, if it didn't go back, it wouldn't be able to be launched forward. And I think as creatives, naturally, when we create our own business, whatever that might be, we are creative in some way, shape, or form. And as creatives, this is the creative path. This is the creative process. We have to allow ourselves to sometimes take that step back, to wander through the mountains, rest on the beach, so that we can then be launched forward. And that's where these massive transformations take place.
Oh my gosh, I love
breakthroughs.
I mean, I've been going through that this summer. I feel like the kids are home. I'm not getting as much done as I want. But you're right. When you look back, if I look back to 2021, when I was in tears on the couch because my job was like, I wasn't going to be able to take my son to preschool because they were like, oh, you're going to have to do 9 o'clock meetings now. You're going to have to do this. And I was like, I looked at my husband. I'm like, I can't take Jet to preschool next year. And he's like, well, if you weren't teaching, what would you do? And I said, well, I love talking to moms. And then from that, it was like, maybe I should start a podcast. Maybe I should start a blog. So to think like, yes, that was a couple years ago, but
Doesn't matter.
Here.
Doesn't matter. Yeah. The timeline doesn't matter. Yeah.
And I love that you say that you go through that as well. Like you're the expert, but you're living the process too. You're going through it just like us. Oh, that's awesome.
100%. 100%.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let me ask you before I let you go two just basic manifestation questions. So what is your like go-to method for manifesting? Is it vision board, journaling? Like what's your fave?
Ooh, I love this question. So again, going to my intuition, there's some seasons of my life where I'll do a specific thing and then I'll change. So I have like my vision board right here.
Me too.
But I do have my vision board. Yes. The thing that I have been doing a lot lately is an embodiment practice of getting into, so I'll share two. Okay. So I'll share one that's more of like evidence-based, science-based. There's a lot of research about somatic response. So I will get into a vision of what I want. And oftentimes it's not necessarily the thing we want, but it's the feeling we believe it's going to get. So we have to get into that feeling state. Getting into that feeling state is what allows us to change our thoughts. When we get into that feeling state and our thoughts are changed, we send out signals into the universe of frequency, because we are all atoms vibrating at a certain frequency. And it's just science. This is evidence-based, hard proof. Then that energy comes back to us. And so what I will do is get into a very specific vision, or even just a vision. Like I'll imagine the TED Talk that I'm about to give in September. And I'll imagine connecting with the 100 souls in the room. And then I'll imagine connecting heart to heart with all the people watching the YouTube video. And I'll get into what that feels like. I'll get into that sensation of what it feels like. And it feels grounded. It feels empowered. It feels really like it feels very divine. Like it's not me. It's not even about me. I'm just this vessel. And I allow myself to get into that feeling as much as possible. You can set a timer and you
Love
can do
that.
it every day for 15 to 30 seconds and just get into that feeling and then let it go and know that that's enough. It's that somatic feeling of like allowing our bodies to get familiar with what that actually feels like, because our bodies are often the last to catch up. And if we have had any sort of trauma, which we all have, big T or little t trauma, then our bodies we need to be gentle with our bodies and allow ourselves that space to really know that that feeling and what we desire is actually safe to receive.
Oh, I love that.
Yes, yes. And then the second one I love is I've actually been doing this a lot lately, and I've never really done, I've heard it a few times, I've never done it, but I will grab my water and I will speak intentions into it. So I'll speak, I am ready to be seen for my gifts. I'm ready to come home into my worthiness. I am my most vibrant self. I'm ready to make a greater impact. Lots of things. And I'll just speak into it lovingly for like 15 or 20 seconds, whatever's coming to me. And then throughout the day, every time I take a swig of water, I just imagine that those intentions. Exactly. Yes. And there was a study done about that too, about speaking into water and the different water crystals and what it actually looked like under a microscope. It's fascinating.
Fascinating. I am actually fascinated by the science of manifesting.
Yes.
Love that. So interesting. Okay. Second thing, if someone was wanting to learn just the basics of manifesting, what, do you have any books or like, where's the first place to start looking?
Yeah. So, oh gosh. Okay. So I'll recommend some books and then I'll also recommend some resources that I have too. So the first book that's coming to mind very clearly is Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill.
Okay.
And I believe there's another one. I can't remember the author, but I will send it to you. Maybe you can put it in the show.
I'll put it in the show notes.
Is The Subconscious Mind. Something about the subconscious mind. They're both older books, but they're fascinating. And so if I think of any other, I feel like there's more and I'm just coming to a block right now.
I've read so many. It's interesting because like I started learning about it in like my 20s. I read The Secret, and that was kind of like the start of, I'll try a vision board. Let me start that. But then you start learning about it and you're like, whoa, people knew about this way before I even like heard of it. So like when you said Think and Grow Rich, that's a pretty old book.
Very old book.
Like, oh, this was around for a very long time. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. It is. Isn't it fascinating to understand that? Yeah.
Yeah.
And then anyone who I love to give manifesting tips. So you can go to my Instagram. It's I am Jenn Adamson, and it's Jenn with 2 N's.
I'll put it down in the description below. Yeah.
Yeah. Beautiful. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, where else can we find you? You have a website. Where can we find you?
I do. Yes. JennAdamson.com, JennAdamson. And I also just love to I am also like a big fan of just getting like, okay, what else? What else is out there? I'm always surprised by how many other people are doing other things or variations of things. And I'm just like, this is so cool. Yes. So there's a wealth.
And it actually inspires me when I hear someone doing something and then they manifested what they wanted. Like I love hearing stories from people who are like, I really wanted like this pregnancy and this is how I manifested it. That inspires me.
It is inspiring to me too.
And then you're going to have a TED Talk soon?
I am. Yes.
Tell me about that.
So that is coming out in Huntington Beach, September 23rd of this year, 2023. And the talk is done. So that was a big feat.
Oh, that's a big. Was that something you had envisioned? You were envisioning speaking?
Yes. So actually, back in 2011 is when I saw my first TED Talk and was like, I'm doing that. I just knew it, locked in. And then about a year ago this time, even before, I was like, had really no clue. I was just like, hey, I'm ready to manifest. I had this idea, and it has a bit of manifesting in it. And it was, I'll give a little preview. It's about the energetics of the white coat that doctors and nurses wear in the medical field, and how it has the actual power to either elevate a person's vital signs, blood pressure, heart rate, or actually create a calming effect, all in the intention of how we choose to wear the white coat. Yes.
That's so interesting. Every time I went in to get my blood pressure checked when I was pregnant, it was like super high. I've never in my life had high blood pressure, but they check it every single time. And one time they said, oh, if it gets any higher, you're going to be hospitalized. And every time I freaked out after that. And my husband kept saying, it's in your head. It's in your head. I'm like, I couldn't even look when they did it. I was so nervous.
Totally. It has a big effect. Absolutely. And who knows, right? There's lots of underlying things that can happen too. But overall, yes, it's in how we choose as professionals, medical professionals, to show up among our patients, and how the way that we show up creates a certain outcome.
Interesting.
Very
Oh,
specific
you've
outcome.
got exciting things coming. Well, I'm going to make sure I list all of that below. And thank you so much for sharing everything about your journey. I've really enjoyed this.
Thank you, Katie. This was a fun conversation. Thank you for
Very
this
fun.
time
And good
too.
luck with kindergarten in September.
You too. Yes, I'm serious. Let's get a coffee date on board, and we'll connect and
Let's
touch base again.
Yes. All right. Sounds good. Well, I hope you feel so inspired after this wonderful momversation. I left feeling so positive and so good the rest of the day. So I hope this brings you a bit of inspiration as well. Now I think I'm going to go and lay down and envision my podcast taking off, all those 5-star reviews rolling in, and how happy I'm going to feel when I see that. All right, until next week's momversation, I want to remind you that everyone burns their first pancake, so just keep flipping.